We gather today in sadness as we offer tribute to a great life and to the memory of Senator E. Leo Kolber. We turn to the words of our tradition, to the words of the Psalm for comfort. Enosh kechatzir yamav katzitz hasadeh ken yatzitz. Our days on earth are like grass. Like wildflowers we bloom. Ki ruach gavra bo ve'enenu v'lo yikirenu od mekomo. The wind blows and we are gone, as though we had never been here. V'chesed Adonai me'olam ve'ad olam al yireah v'tzidkato livnei vanim. But the Lord's kindness lasts forever, and the Lord's charity to future generations. Dear family and dear friends, we gather today to honor the memory and mourn the loss of the Honorable Senator E. Leo Kolber, Yechiel Aryeh ben Moshe Yitzchak Veluba, who passed away peacefully at his home on Thursday, on the 12th day of the month of Tevet in the year 5780 on the Hebrew calendar. Beloved husband of Ronnie Hirsch and the late Sandra Maisel, loving and devoted father and father-in-law of Lynn and Barry Halliday and Jonathan and Irit Kolber, proud and cherished grandfather of Olivia Halliday, of Benjamin, Daniela, and Michael Kolber, dear brother and brother-in-law of Samuel and the late Jackie Kolber, and brother-in-law of Dr. Sam and Nora Friedman. Leo will be lovingly remembered by Ronnie's children and their spouses, Joy and Stuart Bailey, Dove and Cara Gandel, and by Ronnie's grandchildren, Seth and Talia Bailey, and Henry Gandel. Leo will be sadly missed by his nieces, nephews, family, friends, former colleagues, and all who had the privilege of having known him. At this time, we will hear eulogies, first from Ronnie's daughter, Joy Bailey, followed by Leo's dear friends, Charles Bronfman, and be followed by the Right Honorable Jean Chrétien.
After my father passed, I started thinking about the person my mother would eventually meet and marry. Who would it be? What would he be like? And so over time I came up with a set of criteria of what was important to me in the person my mother would meet. He had to be younger than my father, he had to treat my mother like a queen, and he had to include my family and not take her away from us. So when she met Leo, we quickly realized that he met the first two criteria. But what about the third? What would he want with a young family? The first time we had a family dinner, magic happened. Because of the rigid sleep schedule I created for my children, we left the house before being asked to leave. Going forward, we were in his good books forever. Over the years that followed and through almost weekly Sunday night dinners of Côte Saint-Luc barbecue chicken and Yancey ribs while watching golf, football, or a combo of the two, we became a family. I remember Leo being silly with the kids with his funny handshakes and constant requests to do pup to the belly, as he would say, bringing smiles and laughter from Seth and Talia. Stuart and Leo would sit, watch, and discuss golf and football for hours. I remember a time I was unwell and both Leo and my mother sent me to the JGH ER where a doctor was waiting for me. A few hours later, I woke up to my mom and Leo in full black tie regalia, horrified by the infection in my eyelid. They brought me back to their house and put me to bed. Sometime around 3 a.m., Leo walks into the room to check on me, asking how I was feeling, wanting to know what he can do or get for me. His concern for me was evident, and in that and countless other moments, there was a closeness between us. Luckier still, we were welcomed into the extended Kolber and Halliday families with warm, open arms. When Leo started the last journey of his life, we stayed by his side and returned the love and caring he showed us all those years. Leo not only met the 3 criteria I had for a future husband for my mom, he took them into a whole other stratosphere. Leo, we will always love you, and your passing has left a hole in our family that will never be replaced.
I guess like many, I'd give anything to not be here today. But I am, and we are, and sadly Leo is. I've been told that Leo and I were best friends, only for 70 years. We met at McGill, and throughout those 70 years we traveled the roads. We had the highs, we had the lows, we had and shared happiness, sadness. I remember very well visiting his house where I met my dear good friend Sam and Leo's and Sam's incredible mother, Luba. And if anybody didn't know Luba, they missed a great treat. And I remember Leo coming to our house, where he would literally sit at the knee of my father, and Dad would teach him, and Leo, whose father, a dentist, had passed away when Leo was 16 years old, would sit and adopt my father as his stepfather. And he would listen and he would learn. And my father encouraged our relationship, because here he had 2 boys, 2 rich kids, and he found this young man who was so bright and so down to earth, and he figured, okay, If they go astray, this young man will steady them down and keep their feet to the fire. And boy, was he right. But Leo wanted to prove himself to Edgar and me. So what he first did was he bought some land in Westmount for 30 cents, I think it was, a square foot, and sold them 6 months later at 60 cents a square foot. He often told me that he could have sold the land for a lot more if he had kept it, but he wanted to prove to Edgar and me and to Dad that he could make a profit for us. That was really the beginning of the business relationship. And actually, although Leo and I were great friends, I couldn't ask him because I was too friendly. So Edgar asked Dad, could Leo take over our budding family business? And the rest, frankly, is history. When Leo did Fairview, the shopping centers, I chose the name. That's the only thing I had to do with it. Chose the name. He made the money, I chose the name. It was great. And the reason, for those of you who don't know it, the Cadillac Fairview became Cadillac Fairview is because Leo lost a coin toss to Eve Diamond of the Cadillac Company. And so Cadillac went first. But the thing that is remarkable about our relationship is that it continued to the end of Leo's life. Leo was a mentor and advisor to my son Stephen, was on Stephen's board, and more than that, I enjoy a wonderful relationship with Lynn, with Jonathan, with their spouses, and Jonathan and Stephen, my son, are good friends and business partners. So it is wonderful, Leo, thank you so much, that our friendship goes to the next generation. We love to play golf together, he and I. He used to bet that in a round of 18 holes, I could not survive without throwing a golf club somewhere. He would win the bet. What can I tell you? And then he had his great romance with Sandra. Now, this was a marriage made in heaven. She was a socialist and an intellectual, and he was anything but. He was a capitalist entrepreneur. I lived through their whole romance, the ups, the downs, the separation, the getting back together, the everything else. And I remember when they were married at the Ritz here in Montreal, how I was shaking my head going, and everybody was saying, oh, he's sad at losing his friend. And it wasn't that. I said, oh my God, how's this going to work? Anyway, it did pretty darn well. And I remember holding Jonathan, my godson, and Lynn in my arms when they were both born. Everything for Leo was going so well. His business acumen took him to the very top. He became a director of the Toronto Dominion Bank, later on a senator, and then he sort of semi-retired. And he and Sandra would take these wonderful trips with Prime Minister Trudeau, and who had also retired. And they would, I remember that one of the trips they took was the Trans-Siberian Railroad to Beijing, no less. And Trudeau was feted everywhere in the world by all the leading lights that there were, all the top politicians, and that was right up Leo's alley. He loved meeting royalty, hotshots, stars, all stars. I can see Jean Chrétien nodding his head, Brian Mulroney nodding, Jean Chrétien nodding their heads. Anyway, then one Sunday morning, the phone rang in Palm Beach. It was Leo. Sandra had been stricken, and he didn't know if she would live that through the night or through the day. So I hightailed it to Montreal, and this was the beginning of a very, very difficult period in Leo's life and Sandra's life. But I think Joy put it rightly a few minutes ago. He was so kind to her. She had a tough life. She had a tough go. And he was by her side morning, noon, night, whatever she could have, he gave. Because a lot of people don't know he had a very tough exterior. But Leo was a very, very gentle, very sincere, very emotional man. He had two things that he loved to do. He loved the Jewish General Hospital. He loved what he could do there. He loved being president. And he loved coming here. Kol Nidre night, he would stand right there, and he would start the ceremony by opening the ark. That was his great privilege in life, and he just loved it. When he was called to the Senate, he became a great staunch supporter of the Liberal Party, and he also was chairman of the Finance Committee of the Senate and chairman of the Finance Committee of the Toronto Dominion Bank. Then he had a second partnership, and she's sitting right in front of us, Ronnie. Ronnie and Leo were a wonderful partnership. Why? Because when Ronnie was ill, Leo did everything in the world to aid her. When Leo was ill, Ronnie did everything in the world to not only prolong his life, but to make him as comfortable as humanly possible. So it was a wonderful relationship, and Ronnie, I just hope that it won't end. As for me, Leo will say in my heart, as a brilliant, steadfast, generous man, and as great a friend as I would ever want.
Mes chers amis, Léo Kolber est un exemple de ce qu'il y a de meilleur au Canada. Il a perdu son père très jeune. Sa mère était une femme extrêmement courageuse. Et il avançait dans la vie. Et il est monté au sommet. Pour tout le monde, he is what is best in Canada. Hardworking, very intelligent, very pleasant, always there when you needed him. Very proud of his family, very proud of his faith, very proud of Canada. He was a senator and, as Mr. Bronfman said, a great, great supporter of the Liberal Party. But he was at what I would call not on the left wing of the Liberal Party. So I'll receive a few lectures. And as he was the fundraiser for me, I was obliged to listen. And he had some, when I took over, the finance of the party were terrible. And I asked for advice. And Leo went to see all the mess we were in. You know, because Maroney was the prime minister, so the businessman was not giving very much to the Liberal Party. So Leo looked at the books, and he came with a great recommendation: we have to declare bankrupts. I could have said to him today, yes, Trump did that, but I cannot do it. I said, Leo, can I start? Go to the Kenyan people, say, I just went bankrupt and I want to run the country now. So Leo said that made sense. So he went out and he collected the money and we paid the debt and we managed to form the government. And he was a senator, very present in the Senate. He was the chair of the Banking and Financial Committee. So I would seek his advice from time to time, and it was always very pleasant. So one day I asked him, I said, Leo, do you really enjoy it to be a senator? You know, you were probably making more money in Montreal. Oh, he said, there's some benefit to that. I said, what is the greatest benefit you have out of it? He says, when I go to New York and I go in a restaurant, I gave my card as a senator, I get a good table. So, I think that his friend Pierre was wise to make sure that Leo was to have a good table in New York. Because he was a very good friend of Pierre Trudeau, and they traveled, as you mentioned, together, and, it was a great friendship. But in a turbulent world that we're living today, Leo is an example that we're very lucky to be Canadian, where we can be different, having different language, different color of the skin, different religions, and we are living together in peace, and we are an example to the world. And the example of the best of that is Leo Kolber. He was a gentleman from Westmount. And he was a great Canadian. So he served the country very well. And we should say thank you, Leo, for a job well done. And vive le Canada.
Music was an important part of Leo's life. He loved music. He was a patron of many musical events that took place in this sanctuary. And for many years, he served as vice president of the executive committee of the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. And at this time, we invite Professor Timothy Hutchins, the principal flute of the Orchestre Symphonique de Montréal, to play a Bach partita, Saraband, in A minor, as a tribute to Leo. At this time, we call upon Leo's children, Lynn, followed by Jonathan, to offer eulogies.
I'm clearly older than everyone else who spoke because I need glasses. With apologies to my dad and to Ian MacDonald, I've been thinking about the title of my dad's book, Leo, A Life. I'm sure you all read it or received it as a gift. It's a decent title. It's short and to the point, kind of like my dad. It's a good encapsulation of the man, direct, blunt, almost gruff in its simplicity. But I think there could have been other descriptors after that semicolon. Leo, a success story. Or my Uncle Sam suggested Leo, a fairy tale. Or maybe Leo, just take some aspirin. But the more I think about it, the more I believe the title should have been Leo, a love story. My dad loved so many things, from the mundane, playing pinochle, golf, the Yankees, the Expos, the Canadiens, a good glass of scotch, the causes in which he believed so strongly, Israel, the OSM, his beloved Jewish General Hospital. He loved giving back. He took the lump of clay he had been handed and polished and spun and pounded it into a masterpiece of a life. And then he loved giving it back to his community, back to his country of which he was fiercely proud, back to his family. He had many, many people he loved. His final caregivers, who gave him so much love and loyalty. Too many doctors to mention. His brother Sam and his family, his oldest and dearest friend Charles and his family, his godson Stephen and his family, me, my brother, our families, Joy and Dove and their families, my mother, Sandra Maisel, and the unexpected final twist in the story, Ronnie, who he adored. When he first met Ronnie, he said, "You gotta meet her. When she walks into a room and smiles, the whole room lights up." Ronnie, to whom we are forever grateful for her devotion and grace. Yeah, I think Leo, a love story. It's pretty straightforward.
Hi. I wanted to really briefly touch upon three quick themes. As was said before, Leo was a mentor and a mensch, and we all know that he had a gruff temperament sometimes and occasional streams of colorful expletive deletives, but he was really one of the good guys. His generation occasionally used different idioms and vocabulary, less popular today, but in growing up with him, I can swear that he didn't have a racist, sexist, or homophobic bone in his body. He was an extremely tolerant, understanding human being and a loving and kind father, and I just know that he's going to heaven. The second kind of subject, briefly, which I'd like to touch upon, is his relation with Israel, which was always conflicted. He made over 50 trips there with Charles and Charles's late father, and he loved the country, but when I decided to move there, he was mildly horrified. He became less horrified as he met my wife, my love, Irit, and one day they were sitting, and he said to her, "Now, if Jonathan ever misbehaves, you come to me." And I'm sure he meant it. When I started in business with Charles and his family. We made an investment in a large food company in Israel called Osem, and I happened to be in Montreal, and there was a minor issue in that we had to close the deal in a week, and the Americans decided to invade Iraq, and the Iraqis decided to bomb Tel Aviv with Scuds, and I said, well, I have to go to the closing. And he was horrified, and he and my late mother didn't speak to me for a week. When I got on a plane, which was totally empty, landed in Tel Aviv, and we had the closing. But when we took Osem public and then sold it to Nestle, boy, was he proud. And then the grandchildren, whom he adored. Our son Ben, who's here. I always get teary when I mention this, but when he fought in the 890 Paratroop Division in Gaza, in Operation Cast Lead, Leo was apoplectic. He was beside himself. But when it was over, I think he was full of pride and appreciated the service that was done to the country. But I am quite relieved that our youngest son, who is finishing his advanced training in a Special Forces reconnaissance unit, is something that my dad was not aware of, because I think that would have been one step too far. When I joined the kind of movement of investing in tech companies, Startup Nation in Israel, I was really surprised when Dad came and said, I want to invest with you. And those of us who knew Leo, I mean, he really was not a great technologist. I think he had a third-generation cell phone even up to the end. But we invested together in a couple of things, and when they turned into unicorns, he was thrilled, and he kept asking and talking about them, and it's all he could talk about. He and Mom had a lifelong friendship with Shimon Peres, and did so much with him and his family. And so Lynn and I are really thrilled to say that the big piazza in front of the Peres Center for Peace in Tel Aviv Jaffa will be named after Sandra and Leo Kolber. And we've just worked that out with them, and I can't think of a nicer thing that they would have wanted as a memory there. Last point, which many people touched upon, was his real wisdom and basic no BS common sense. And I remember once when I was having a big bump in business and I needed to consult with him, and I spoke to him and he told me what he thought and what I should do. And then he took his glasses off and he looked at me with those steely eyes and he said, just remember, Jonathan, life isn't a dress rehearsal, it's the actual frigging play. And I thought, wow, that says everything. It put everything in perspective. Anyways, we're going to miss you. I'm going to miss you a lot. God bless. Thank you.
As was mentioned, as Charles mentioned, for many years, Leo was honored by our congregation to stand up in the holiest of moments to open the Holy Ark for the final prayers of Yom Kippur. The prayers are called the Neela Prayers, symbolizing our final opportunity to beseech God before the gates of prayer close for that day. The words include Petach lanu Shaar, open the gate for us. At this time, the gates are closing. For the day is passing, the day will pass, the sun will set, we will come before your gates. The day will pass, the sun will set. Leo's great life, the life of a great man who experienced so much blessing. The life has come to a close. And I will conclude with a few personal thoughts, reflections, as we stood at Leo's bedside the other day in his final hours of life. We offered prayers for Leo. We said the Shema, the great prayer of faith. We cried, seeing this great man surrounded by so much love, this man of great strength lying so peacefully after all the struggle, so peacefully. And I thought in that moment to say the following verse, Adonai oz li'amo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, which means God gives strength to his people. God blesses his people with peace. Strength and peace. Leo was a man of strength. He pursued great ideals in his life. He was strong, a strong personality, with strong views and opinions, a strong drive. His strength, his power, led him to achieve great things, to make a difference for so many. His home, a center of influence and activity. I was told early on that when invited to Leo's home, you do everything in your power to be there. And I took this to heart. One time I sent my pregnant wife in a taxi to the hospital to have the baby. And I went to Leo's house for an event. And only after met her at the hospital, I did make it in time. And I'll never forget my first interaction with Leo. It was in my first weeks as rabbi of this great congregation. And the late Millie Landy called me, and she said, if you're going to succeed at the Shaar, there's one person whose support you need. You have to meet Leo. And so she took me to Leo's home. We sat in the library in the Red Room. We drank the most expensive scotch that I had ever tasted in my life. And Leo interrogated me. And when I left, he gave me a copy of his book. And he inscribed it beautifully with blessings for my success in Montreal. It was one of the important moments in my career. And Leo became an important voice for me and for so many about the direction of this community. And there was also that blessing of seeing him in the more peaceful moments. I think of those moments that I was blessed to see in these last years when he stood under the chuppah with Ronnie, looked so happy and content. When his home was filled with friends and dignitaries. And when he stood here in this room on the holidays. And there were conversations when he would become nostalgic. He would talk about his connection with his brother. He would talk about his longtime friendship with Charles and what that meant to him. And he talked to me about his childhood. I remember him sitting in my office and telling me that when he was young, when he was 16, his father passed away, and the members of the Shaar Hashomayim daily minyan raised money to pay for Leo's streetcar fare so that he could come here every day to help out with the minyan and to say Kaddish for his father. You know, in Leo's book, he describes the arrangements that he was entrusted to make for his mentor Sam Bronfman's funeral, which took place here in this sanctuary. And Leo described the dignity of that service. And he also described the winter weather that raged outside on that day. And I can only think that Leo would be pleased and honored by the many who have come out today in sadness and gratitude to remember a man of strength and ideals, a man who meant so much to so many, and we extend our condolences to his family. This is a beautiful sight to see the family sitting together in unity, offering tributes to Leo. To Ronnie, your years together meant so much to Leo, brought so much blessing into both of your lives. From that first time you met, when Leo sent his driver to your home to deliver a copy of his book so that you would be prepared for the first date, until his last days, with you, Ronnie, by his side. You shared a very special connection, and we bless you with strength and comfort during this difficult time. We offer our sympathies to Lynn, to Jonathan, and to their families. Leo's legacy is one that will remain with his family for generations, and we pray that his values, his wisdom will continue to guide and inspire his family in your lives. We gather today to mourn the passing of a man of great dignity, of great strength, who is remembered for the friendships and the connections of his life. His life was filled for blessing, and he knew it. He didn't take these blessings for granted. He was generous. He offered wisdom. He cared deeply about making this world a better place, and he will be missed by the many who were fortunate to know him. May his family find comfort in his legacy. May his memory be a blessing for years and generations to come. Yehi zichro baruch, and let us say, Amen. Please rise for the memorial prayer.
Mishkavot
Almighty grant Leo Kolber, Yechiel Aryeh ben Moshe Yitzchak Veluba, his place in paradise. May his memory be a blessing for all those whose lives he touched. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. The Shiva will be observed at his home at 100 Summit Circle. Visitations can be made today following the burial until 5:30 p.m. Prayer services at his home today will be at 5:15 p.m. Tomorrow through Wednesday, visitations can be made from 2 to 4 and 7 to 9 p.m. And services Monday through Wednesday evenings will be at 7:30 p.m. The burial will take place at the congregation Shaar Hashomayim, the cemetery. Leo's pallbearers will be Charles Bronfman, Stephen Bronfman, Daniel Kolber, Dov Gendel, Stuart Bailey, Barry Halliday, Albert Cohen, and Ben Kolber. At this time, we ask everyone to please remain in your places. Will the pallbearers please step forward?